I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is PsycHack's Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is the old man at the club. This is a phrase I often hear in my consultations with male clients and even in the mouths of my own male friends. These guys are typically in their early to mid-30s, and they usually spent their 20s sowing their wild oats or playing the field. And they are now reaching the age when they feel it would be inappropriate for them to continue to do so. After all, they don't want to be the old guy at the club, an image that is both creepy and pathetic. That is, the man is clearly past his prime, but hasn't yet read the writing on the wall. And there he is making all the young women feel disgusted and uncomfortable. Who would want to be that guy? What's more, these men also believe that if they persist much longer in this behavior, then all the good women who might be wife material will be snatched up and that they're going to miss the boat for a long-term relationship. And this in turn stokes the fear that they will die alone. More on that later in this episode. And while I can understand where this concern is coming from, I also maintain that it is fundamentally misguided. When I hear someone say that he doesn't want to be the old guy at the club, I typically respond, well, what club are you talking about? The nightclub or the country club? The oldest, most dated man in one context might be the youngest, most relevant man in another. The fact of the matter is that if you want to maintain your options as a man, you need to have a club, broadly defined. Nightclubs aren't the only clubs there are. And frankly, there isn't much for high-value men there anyway. A club, broadly defined, could be a professional network, or a community of like-minded men, or a society of shared vision. And aging out of one typically means that you're aging into another. Yes, it might be unbecoming of a man of a certain age to hover in the shadows of a discotheque, but there are other alternatives to that scene than settling down into domestication, which, if it's chosen, should be chosen because you want it, not because you don't want something else. For instance, one alternative to the nightclub is the country club. And let me tell you, it's possible to pick women up 20 years younger than you in both places if you have a mind to do that. The point is that as a man, you can continue to play the field for as long as you want to, provided you find an appropriate milieu to do so. And if you play your cards right, which includes not foreclosing prematurely to avoid a negative outcome, this often becomes easier for men to do as they age. The issue is that what tends to make older men attractive to women doesn't really shine through at the nightclub. Like, the main way these men can stand out in the nightclub is through their ability to spend tens of thousands of dollars on bottle service and VIP lounges, which younger men typically just can't afford. And let's be real. While this will absolutely attract female attention, it will generally attract immature and materialistic female attention. Behaving in this way is going to attract opportunistic gold diggers who are going to attempt to exploit that man for his resources because, let's be fair, that's precisely what that man is aggressively marketing he's good for. If a man baits his hook with money, he can't complain when he catches gold diggers. So the idea is for men to continue to put themselves in contexts in which what they have to offer is both highly visible and highly salient. This is akin to seizing or creating opportunities to be a contextual alpha. Circulate in environments where you are both valued and appreciated. It doesn't matter if that environment is a boardroom or a golf course or a Magic the Gathering tournament. Like, if there are women in those environments, those women will be looking for and focusing on the men at the top of those status hierarchies. Make sure you're one of them. And if, for whatever reason, you can't be, then it might be better for you to find a different scene than to quit the game completely. Find clubs that play to your strengths and highlight the most attractive features of your lifestyle. If you appreciate the insights on this channel, I would highly encourage you to get your hands on a copy of my book, The Value of Others. Over the course of 432 pages, I delve deep into my economic model of relationships and explain the behavior of both men and women in the game of mating and dating. I also provide a lot of actionable advice on how to get and keep more of what you want in the sexual marketplace. Once you read The Value of Others, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. Now available in ebook, audiobook, and paperback formats. The links are in the description. Now, the other component of this concern of being the old guy at the club is the fear of dying alone. The idea is that if you don't find a partner by a certain date, then you've just missed the boat on a long-term committed partnership, which means that you might end up dying in a gutter somewhere alone and forgotten. So let's talk about this. First and foremost, it's important to appreciate that everyone dies alone. This is an uncomfortable existential fact, but that doesn't diminish its fundamental truth. Regardless of whether you die nameless in some miserable trench in a misguided war, or comfortably in your bed, surrounded by your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, you're the only one who dies. Only you will be passing through the eye of the needle, and only you will have to face whatever is on the other side of that experience. This is true irrespective of whether you are completely isolated or surrounded by adoring loved ones. And this is why it's important for every person to come to terms with their own existence and to make peace with their God well in advance of that happening, because no one else is going to be going through that with you, even if they wanted to. However, leaving this aside, it's also true that wherever there are people, there are relationships, which means that relationships are possible at every stage of life. For example, it's a somewhat uncomfortable fact that a common hotbed for STDs are nursing homes. It turns out that 80-year-olds still love to fuck, and they often do it with abandon. People often don't like the idea of grandma and grandpa getting it on until, of course, they become grandpas and grandmas, and then suddenly they don't really see what the issue is. In any case, the fact is that there are possibilities for relationship at every stage of life. And this is particularly true for men, given the simple fact that, as a function of time, there generally are more of them than there are of us. Like in the West, women both outnumber and outlast men. So on the population level, demand for men tends to outstrip supply across the lifespan, and men typically benefit from this economic reality. And while it might be difficult for a man in his 70s to get with a woman in her 20s, and he may not want to anyway, that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to limit himself to a woman in her 70s either. Like when you're 70, 40 is going to seem really young and vital. And it's certainly possible for men to mate and date women 20, even 30 years younger than them if they so desire. I've seen men get divorced at 50 and enter into satisfying, committed relationships with a new woman throughout their 50s, and then another woman throughout their 60s, and then another woman throughout their 70s, and so on. And this kind of works for them because they typically want different things in their 50s than in their 70s. And they more or less learn to let relationships run their course, rather than try to force one person to be all things for all time, which might be how they ended up getting divorced in the first place. So that's what I got for you. If you're aging out of the nightclub, then find a different club where you're valued and relevant. And if you're worried about the future, just remember that relationships are possible in every phase of life, all the way up to the end. What do you think? Does this fit with your own experience? Let me know in the comments below. And please send this episode to someone who you think might benefit from its message, because it's word of mouth referrals like this that really help to make the channel grow. And anyone looking to join my free weekly newsletter or book a paid consultation can do so on my website, links in the description. As always, I appreciate your support, and thank you for listening.